I'm Ray Grubit, and today I'm showing you my old Panzerblitz game, copyrighted 1970. It's one of my first games after maybe I played games like Gettysburg and Tactics 2 and Blitzkrieg, some of those earlier games. Finally, Jutland, a sea game. This one kind of reminds me of the Jutlands, and Jutland was kind of a miniatures game with ships. This one's kind of a small tactics miniatures game with tanks and smaller units of tanks and infantry that are able to shoot. So that was a different thing. They were able to shoot across a certain space with line of sight and things like that. So that was very, very exciting new game I got when I was a youngster. And so I'm going to unbox this one. I'll show you my old box, such as it is, all beat up. And then after that, I'll play a scenario. It's been about, looking on YouTube, looks like the scenarios are about 5 years old, so a new one's probably overdue. And I think I'll play one of the later scenarios in the box. Some people seem to be using 1 and 3. I'm tempted to use 12 with all the units there, but we'll see which one I come up with. So I'll put that all together, and you'll see the unboxing next, and then next you'll see a video of me playing the game turn by turn, and you can follow to see what I think about it, playing it again, using just the rules in this box. There were later games, Panzerleader, Arab-Israeli Wars, and others, maybe some other modifications that Avalon Hill promulgated, and I think even a computer game version of this game. But I'm just going to use the rules in the box as it was. The rules kind of make it playable. Maybe they sacrifice some realism, but it still felt like you were at war with tanks and men on the Russian front with this game. So I enjoyed it when I was younger. So I'll try to play it through, and because I enjoy these games, I like war games. Perhaps you'll like the videos too as you follow. Thank you. Okay, here I am doing, as promised, I'm going to unbox this Panzerblitz game, old Panzerblitz game. You notice all the old tape trying to desperately hold this thing together. So from when you got the game the old time, open it up, and there's the tables on the outside slipcover. So you can use these to post them up, and as you're playing, use it for reference. So that was really handy. Good idea. And then we have the boards. There's 3 geomorphic, what do you call them, interchangeable boards that you can do things with. You can put them out like side by side and change them to different scenarios and different types of geography, and then you can switch around this way, that way, and if you want to design your own, which I did a few times, did that too. And then you can make them long ways if you want to have a long approach to some kind of battlefield. So it's they were very useful, and you can just use your imagination actually and make your own battles, which occasionally I do. But this time I think I'll use one of those scenarios. And this one's given away. I'm going to have to tape it back. It's just going desperately bad. Okay, then you open it up, and the rules were in, well, let's see, here's some rule books. I'll look at those in a second. Well, let's go and look. That's a campaign analysis book with a little more detail about it, but here's the basic rules. The basic rules were in terms of a pamphlet that you folded out. Mine's going to need tape to get it back to its usable state, because it was all taped together. All came together, and you see there, you put it together, there's that layout for the rules, like this, front and back. Gives you all the rules, not a lot of rules to play the game. So you can get through it pretty quick, but it's quite a bit, it's some detail, but I'll refresh those in my memory before I play. And then I'll put this back carefully. It would look something like this in your, if you get a newer one, perhaps it'll be all folded up and look like that. Then you had a Panzerblitz campaign analysis. The designers tell you how they designed it. They give you some notes on tactics, show you where in the big war picture where the situations happened, give you some idea of some additional units, how to make large units. I imagine that happened at some of those war game conventions that I didn't go to, that I wanted to when I was a youngster. And campaign analysis, things like that, and some interesting profiles on the different weapons. So it was a very exciting game when I first got it, because all the other games were all like Tactics 2 and Gettysburg and blitzkrieg. All my little pieces moved around. It was quite fascinating to do that. But this is one where they actually were able to shoot at each other from a distance. I remember a ship game called Jutland where you did that as well, almost like a miniatures game. So but here with this one, it's kind of like miniatures in some ways. It feels like it. But we have our scenarios. There's 12 of them. So I'll probably pick one that it's later on, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, one of those, and set it up and play it. And so the you can also make your own, of course. That's one of the benefits of this game. It's almost like a designer game. And then these little pieces would have been on a punch card, and I have them all sorted out by units now into Ziploc bags, handy Ziploc bags. But when I opened the box from years ago, you can tell how long ago this was. I didn't have Ziploc bags. I had them in little offering envelopes from the church. Remember these kind of offering envelopes? Had a lot of extra of those, and I used them for some for offering, I hope, but mostly for it looks like for things like this. Anyway, the little pieces are bigger than average than the size you see. A lot of war games later came out. They would just save space and map size. I think they made them smaller, which made it more difficult to handle. But these bigger pieces were a novelty when they came out, and they were funner. They were more useful, you might say. So there's some Russians. Here's some artillery, German artillery, German infantry, and armored units, artillery, armor units, German armor units, some German transport units. I haven't sorted out different ways. There's some Russian transport units. And then we have obvious functional units like Rex. And I used part of the game board to get me my own little table years ago. And here's here we go. There's fortresses and some little clip-ons to clip the game together. Dice, some more functional counters. And that's pretty much what came in the game. So if you get one of these games, you can expect to find those parts. So next video, I'm going to start a scenario and play a game. Okay, so the game is set up for the scenario number 10. You'll notice it says this was part of the largest tank battle of the war. So we have boards 1, 2, 3 long. The Russians set up first on board number 2 over here, and then they need to have as many units as possible on and get victory conditions by the number of units they have remaining on board number 3 at the end. The Germans come in on the south side of board number 1, and they get victory conditions on how many Russian units they destroy, and then also avoiding the Russian conditions, and so they have to be concerned about driving the Russian units off of board number 3. There's a big open space here, so it's where the conflict is going to happen. I set up the Russians so perhaps they can make use of the gully and hold their T-34s in there because they have a lower range, and they'll be protected from the longer range guns from the Germans, and maybe they can pop out and shoot if they have to and just hold on to that space. Threw a few units up here of the anti-tank battalion on some hills to slow down the Germans perhaps and let the rest try to escape to this next board. But the Germans were able to set up some of their howitzer type weapons within range, so I don't expect well for those artillery units on the hill. So there we go. That's the setup for the first time, and we're committed to that. I'm committed to that, and let's see what happens. Okay, here's the situation after turn 1. Turn 1 is over. So we see the Germans have moved onto the board, and as expected, I left these turned over because they're the ones that fired. I can turn those over again and see, but you'll see that that was a Hummel unit. And they, as expected, they blew the artillery off of the hill. So the Russians didn't survive that, but they did pull their artillery back, so they only lost 3 units. So there's some conservation of units lost to prevent the Germans from achieving their objective, and these might slow down the German advance into board 3. All these units down here cannot advance onto the board until the first German unit comes onto board 3. So that's all the Russians can do for this turn. Okay, so here the second turn is done. The Germans move first again, so they're able to advance into board 2, I mean, or board 3, yeah. And then so that gives the Russians the permission to bring their units on. Now they have to wait for the Germans before they could do that. So they're moving in to seize some spots. There are things called spotting in this game, so the ones in the cities and in the forest can't be shot at unless they're spotted. So that necessitated moving up a German unit into the woods, which was killed by the artillery unit, but now they'll be able to shoot at it if those are spotted. So that kind of gives there's other games that use opportunity fire, and this one doesn't have that, but the spotting rule kind of creates a problem like that. This little unit's trying to get out. So far we have 3 Russian units down, 1 German unit down, and German units moving into the board on their attack. So we'll see what happens on the next turn around. Here's the other board here. Okay, here we are on the third turn. 18 minutes into the battle. They're 6-minute turns each. The Germans have moved more. They did a close assault to drive, destroyed more artillery units and truck units as they drove them out of this little town of Zebvinia. Able to take advantage of the depression to hide our half-track units above ground level, but it appears that these units will put them in range and they can shoot down in there. 40 howitzers, so that is a serious threat to the Germans. I'm not sure what to do about that next turn. So these units are all here to stay. Some of what happened is staging. I should have staged it correctly to have these howitzer units, the Hummel and the Wesp on Hill 123 by this turn, but I had to do some shuffling on the roads because you can only put 1 unit on the road at a time, and these guys have slow movement factors to climb up there. There's a truck unit that's still trapped behind the lines. So remember the Germans get points for eliminating Russian units. So far they've eliminated 6. So victory conditions, they're on their way to marginal victory already. 10 Russian units destroyed. So there you go, that's turn 3. Alright, this is the Germans after the Germans, just the Germans' turn. I haven't done the Russians' turn yet. So the Germans have advanced. They've left these units here. They're trying to find a way to place themselves up, and they have some of their howitzers high with the range all the way to the end of this board. So the Russians are going to have to start looking for better cover for their small units like trucks and infantry, but so far they're undercover or not spotted. So we'll see how the Russians can respond to this turn. Okay, so the Russian turn is complete now. Swim back and take a look and see what's happening here. So they pulled some of their units out of the open space and hit them, and strengthened the units in the town, anticipating a close assault from these right here sometime. So they unloaded the infantry on the hills to hold the position, because they only have to keep units on the board and avoid the German victory conditions of losing the units. If they can hold them on the board, they'll win the game. So they'll get a higher victory level. And so the Germans are in position to try to start to make an assault on this little town of Siena, it looks like. Okay, Here we are again at this time it's the Germans' fifth turn. Russians haven't played yet. We see that they have all three of their units on top of this high point to be able to shoot across the board. They didn't make their close assault, but they stacked up a few more units here, planning for it. Those units were able to disperse the Russian Su-152 on top of this hill 102, 107, sorry. So the Russians are trying to hold on to the position. If they can hold units on the board and not have many losses, they'll be okay. It looks like it's like a chess game with the central point stacking up right here on this little town of, what's called Opustoshina. So there you go. So let's see what happens. They have a turn to prepare again, and then it'll be the Germans' turn again. Okay, this is the situation after the Russian turn. Let me go ahead and put the mark there. So Germans haven't moved after you saw this set up a minute ago. And I filmed that. The Russians have made some minor adjustments. They have some truck units that are desperately running away. These units are undispersed and ready to fire. Put some units back. This unit back here loaded back up on the truck, and this one too, anticipating maybe going here to help the city if they get close attack. And everything else is holding steady. So we're just waiting to see kind of what the Germans are going to do next. Okay, here's the situation after the sixth turn is completed. We see the German units in the back have stayed pretty much the same, but they did the assault on Opustoshina. It looks like it was pretty disastrous for German infantry, but there's still some there spotting. So that means these units can be fired upon. So the other units here to defend them. Some came out from the gully here. T-34Cs right here came out to do overruns. Overruns were executed here where this unit went round. It didn't execute an overrun that way. And these did overruns back into the city. This one into the city and this one out that way. So those are pretty disastrous for the German assault group, but it's still holding together, and it looks like that they probably will drive the Russians out of Opustoshina. Okay, turn 7 is over with. The Germans have continued to assault the town and lost most of their assaulting force, but they still have some half-track units that can spot the units in the town, so that may spell the end for those, because there's plenty of units here to fire into that town. So we'll see. There was a close assault tried here, and these other units are holding firm. That's so far the Russians have lost 13 units, which puts the Germans at a marginal victory, but they're holding more than 30 units, I think, on the map board. So they're actually on a decisive victory for the Russians. So it's still the Germans have to continue to push through. So I kind of thought when I opened up the scenario and I looked at the units and the ranges of the Germans of tanks and the T-34Cs only being half of that the Russians were going to get stomped in this scenario. But if you play it a certain way, it looks like it's harder for the Germans to win than you would think. Okay, turn number 8. The Germans have finally completely captured the city. Had quite a few losses, but they have gotten up to 18 units destroyed. So they're moving towards a um, tactical victory, but the Russians are still on a decisive victory with the units they're holding on the board. So the Germans have 2 turns to see if they can drive them off the board or destroy more units. So that's the situation now. We'll see what happens. Okay, so here we are again on this is the 9th turn, or the 8th turn. Completed, 9th turn completed, sorry. Yeah, it is the 9th turn. So, Germans have only one more turn to run. They did get 20 units, so they're on a tactical victory already. So, but it looks like the Russians are pretty well settled here and hard to throw off with this one unit here offering some defense. 10 hexes, it's hard to move close. And these units needing spotting also now. The town is fully captured by the Germans, but still, it looks like it's going to be difficult to dislodge more Russian units. They only have 1 turn to do it, so let's see what happens. Okay, it's the end of the Germans' 10th turn. The Russians can play 1 more turn, but it's basically the Russians have won the game because they have 30 units that can't be dislodged. The Germans, with 1 more turn. The next turn, the Russians will be able to fight back, destroy some of these units, but some of them will remain spotting, and they'll be able to shoot these units that needed spotting and be able to start driving them back. So they should have done that 1 or 2 turns earlier, so they were delayed. If they did this, they might have been able to get closer to a victory. So maybe I delayed too long with the Germans doing this kind of maneuver. And also, I think it took a couple turns, unexpected turns. This unit held out longer in the city than I expected, and that slowed down the German advance just a little bit. So it only took 1 turn. If they had maybe 2 more turns, they might have got closer to victory. So we see a German, the Germans got a tactical victory, but the Russians have a decisive victory. So it's a Russian. This scenario was a Russian victory. Unexpected though. I didn't expect that at all.